Welcome to Room 442. Shaman, Sting, Pararia, Batanyan, and Canada back in action as the build up to the World Cup begins 2-2 against Bahrain. If you missed it, don't worry about it. It wasn't a great match. It was no classic. It felt like a bunch of players hadn't played for a long time, searching for fitness and searching for some kind of form. So I think, Albert, the result was irrelevant. Listen, a loss would have been a little bit embarrassing. Bahrain is not a good team at all. But in the end, it's just about getting minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. We always talk about friendlies that way. Who cares about the result? Especially now, 1 week away from the World Cup. You just want these guys to go out there and not get injured. We were just watching the game. Mikey's like, this is so frustrating. You just don't want these guys to get hurt. And we saw, Kamal Miller go down early. Osorio went down. You see these players start going down. You're like, oh, should we start
Daniil Henry in warm-up.
Daniil Henry in warm-up, exactly, which we're waiting on an update on that. But yeah, the result doesn't matter. It's good that Alistair Johnson and Osorio, those two guys, got 90 minutes under the belt. Koné as well. It's just such a huge thing for them right now.
Yeah, you mentioned Koné there, and if there was a real positive from this match, it was probably Koné. Certainly in that first half performance, should have scored a goal. Don't know how he missed that header, mind you. But this is a young player who we're waiting to break out on the international stage. A young player likely to get a move to a European club, maybe as early as January. Yeah. But overall, Canada's most impressive performer today?
Up there for sure. I mean, so dynamic. And every time you see this guy take the pitch, especially over this last couple of months, it seems like he's taken his game to another notch, another level. Sharpness, you could tell in the central midfield, Koné, his touch was better than anyone else's on the pitch. His movement's a little bit better. He has a little bit of tenacity with him as well. He's blossoming into a complete star here for Canada, and it's great for their future. We'll see. Maybe he's even pushing Atiba for some starting minutes there in Qatar.
Well, that's interesting, Sarah, right? Atiba played this past week in the Turkish Cup. Japan is next week. You get minutes there as well. But if you're John Herman, you're thinking, okay, obviously you want to start Atiba. He's one of your most important players, but you've seen the emergence of a Koné. You have an option there, perhaps, at the very least.
Yeah, definitely having options is good because we know Canada's depth is not the deepest. But I think with Atiba as well, like we saw with Ozo, Kamal Miller, we don't want anyone getting injured. Atiba with his age, also with, he had injuries before. It's probably safer just to not have him play with these matches and then have him come on probably starting for the match against Belgium. So I think it's definitely great with Koné there, but we might see him again against France. But I think we'll probably see Atiba against Belgium.
Yeah, perhaps. That being said, these games, you have to play them, right? But when you're playing a team that's not in the World Cup, nothing to lose, on that kind of surface, the pitch was appalling. And, you wait for an ankle to be turned at any time.
Yeah.
Kamal Miller had an issue there. Ozo as well at one point. So, you have to play these games, I understand, but like Sarah said, we're watching this game, we're like, come on, just get through the 90 minutes.
And ideally, it's against opposition that's going to the World Cup because they understand the significance of getting an injury, with 1 week out from the World Cup. So that's why I don't like the fact that they did play Bahrain, but they needed this game. It was so important. Going back to the performance, it wasn't great, but what I noticed, especially with the back three, they really miss Vittoria. And I think that's one thing we forget about is how he organizes that defense. He may not be the greatest athlete or overall footballer, but he does control that back line. And him not being there, it really showed us that if he's not in there, they're going to have some trouble.
That's such a great point. And I'll ask you, what do you guys make of Joel Waterman's performance there at the back line? Do you think he did enough to
get on the plane? It all depends on the health of Henry, I suppose. I know he's in your squad regardless.
He was in my squad regardless.
He just missed out on my... I don't think you can take too much from the performances in that match, given how rusty these players are. But if Henry is out, we'll wait and see about that. Then Waterman obviously gets for sure on the plane.
I don't think he did himself any favors, though.
But it was tough, Mikey, right?
It was tough.
Last minute, you're getting thrown into that game.
A great point. It is probably unfair to judge him, but...
Yeah, but that's your job, though. If you're Joel Waterman, if you make the move to this squad, you won't be starting.
Right.
More than likely, right? Your job will be potentially coming off the bench, so you better be ready.
Or because of an injury. Right. Exactly. So this could be a scenario in which he is tested. And he hasn't really got that many minutes in a Canada shirt. I don't think he's gotten any minutes in a Canada shirt before this one. So this was really his one showcase to show what he can do with the team. And I don't know if he did himself any favors. However, if Henry's not good to go, I think he gets on the plane because there's just no better alternative.
Yeah, and listen, there's there's not much depth, but there's other centre backs in that squad. Derek Cornelius, for example. But even seeing
Atiba could play centre back.
well, that's I think Atiba would be the next in.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is, and that's because he's the one guy, experienced guy who's done it before. We saw it in qualifying. They didn't go to youth, right? Seeing Kamal Miller out there limping around was a concern. The fact that he didn't come off straight away is probably a good thing, I think, Albert.
Yeah.
Given that, I can't imagine Herman risking him, but it looked like an ankle niggle, which, listen, on that surface shouldn't surprise us.
I was frustrated watching that, honestly, because Herdman, he's a great coach. I'm not saying that he isn't, but if you see a player go down that early in the game and he's carrying that for the rest of the match, and I think he had maybe a little hamstring thing throughout the game, just pull him out of there, right?
Yeah.
Kamal Miller's in your starting 11. He's going to start that game against Belgium. He's not that far off match fitness with CF Montreal going into the MLS playoffs. So, I mean, I just didn't like the handling of that there. But we don't want to see anyone get injured.
Yeah, oh my God, I completely agree. He should have been taken off right away.
Right.
But one thing I just want to mention, you keep referencing the surface. CONCACAF has probably the worst fields we've seen in these World Cup qualifying matches. Canada's played on way worse. You mentioned the game against Jamaica, Honduras. We brought Mexico to the Azteca, which was completely terrible, a terrible way to play football. So I will say, though, I don't want to see these players play on this surface, especially this close to a World Cup. But let's not use that as an excuse just because we should be used to that at this point. That's what Canada plays on.
Live by the sword, die by the sword.
There you go.
The one thing about Kamal Miller, I'll go back and say, and watching that game, we always talk about who's the most important player for this Canadian men's national team, right? And we're always like Fonzie or Eustachio. I saw Kamal Miller go down there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, he's up there. He's
He's
in that
up there, but so is
conversation.
Victoria, for the reasons Albert said there,
Yeah.
right? If he can't go for whatever reason, you're like, oh, wow, who's organising the
Entire
back
back
line?
three, really.
Yeah.
The starting back three is so important.
For sure.
Jonathan Osorio playing 90 minutes is a huge positive for this team. He's barely played in 2 months. He looks okay out there. I know there's some shenanigans post-whistle. He's holding his mate Richie Larea back, which, as you mentioned, we see most weeks for TFC. But just seeing Ozo back on the field is a good thing for Canadian football.
It's absolutely massive. The only thing I will say is what Jonathan Osorio told me was when he's dealing with this head injury, it's not necessarily during the game where it affects him. It's the day after. So we got to see how he responds from this because this will for surely be his first 90 minutes in a couple of months. But the fact he was able to go the full 90, not only that, he looked damn good doing it. Right? He was one of Canada's best players on the pitch. So that's a great sign for John Herdman if he is able to respond and move forward from this.
Yep, listen, it's not about performance today, right? It's about getting through 90 minutes. The build-up begins in earnest properly next week after this weekend of games, which we're all going to be terrified watching. Get through, all the top players, get through this weekend, and then we'll worry about the one last friendly, and then the World Cup that starts next week. It's coming very close. When we come back, we'll look at this weekend's games in the Premier League. Maybe a smart weekend to bet the Dogs, don't you think? Could be some strange results. It is finally upon us, the last round of Premier League games before the World Cup break, which means for this weekend, it might get a little weird. Name one World Cup player who wants any part of these games. Albert and Sarah join me now, and it might be a good time to bet on some Dogs. Sarah, City, Brentford, who you got?
Yeah, James, this is going to be tough. The final Premier League matches before the World Cup. Who knows who's even going to be playing? And if I were any of these City players, I would have my bags already packed for Qatar. Both teams played midweek in the Carabao Cup, where we saw City knock Chelsea out of the third round with a 2-0 win, and Brentford got kicked out by Gillingham in penalties. Let's make this easy. We know even with a heavily rotated side, City has too much depth for Brentford. Not to mention Guardiola will want to go into the World Cup break at the top of the table. Take City to win, plus Julian Alvarez to score.
A quick look at the form table will show you that Everton and Bournemouth are struggling. The pair of them are starting to free fall down the table after losing 4 of their last 6. It's not all bad news for Bournemouth, though. They bounced Everton from the League Cup in midweek, smashing them 4-1. That result should give the Cherries a huge boost of confidence this weekend, despite their poor form. Not only that, Everton's away record is awful. They haven't won in 22 of their last 24 matches as a visitor. Give me the Cherries with the safety of the draw no bet at even money.
Nathan Jones could waste no time at all endearing himself to Southampton faithful with an upset at Anfield on Saturday. The The new manager bounce is real, and Liverpool have lost 2 of the last 3 Premier League outings, both against bottom half clubs. Klopp's side are jumpy and inconsistent, and the normal rules don't seem to apply this season. So could the Saints sneak a draw here? Surely not, right? Southampton have scored only 1 goal in their last 5 Premier League road games, and Liverpool beat them home and away last campaign. But like I said, the new manager bounce is real. So call me crazy, but I'm taking the points to be shared here at plus 550.
Hello, Forest! Steve Cooper and co. knocked Antonio Conte's Spurs out of the Carabao Cup, and Spurs played many of their starters, including Kane. Lingard and Lodi scored, securing the victory for Forest, and now they play host to Crystal Palace. Palace were eliminated from the Carabao Cup by Newcastle in penalties. Rough go for the Eagles. Patrick Vieira's side sits smack in the middle of the table, but now are conceding more goals than they are scoring. And bottom of the table, Nottingham know all about that with a -20 goal differential. Palace just recorded their first away win last weekend against West Ham, and Nottingham on a high after beating the Spurs midweek. It could be a close one. Go for goals.
Tottenham Leeds. Where do I start with this one? Talk about 2 teams who just can't put together a complete performance. Spurs, they can't get going in the first half of games, but start to figure it out in the final 45. Leeds, they can go to Anfield to beat Liverpool, and then need 4 goals to come from behind to beat Bournemouth. And the pair of them were just knocked out of the Carabao Cup as well. The only edge I see here is on the Leeds side, believe it or not. We're a week away from the World Cup, and most of Tottenham's 11 will be going to Qatar. Leeds doesn't have that problem. I wouldn't be surprised to see a drop in performance from Tottenham, with the players being cautious not to pick up an injury. So if you want some action here, sprinkle some change on the dog at plus 420.
Before losing to Crystal Palace last weekend, West Ham had won 6 games on the bounce in front of their home fans. But David Moyes' side came into this one on the back of another home defeat to Championship side Blackburn in the League Cup. So the Hammers as plus 110 favourites doesn't look right to me. Brendan Rodgers seems to have steadied the ship in recent weeks, with the Foxes racking up 4 wins out of 5 in all competitions. They've only conceded once in that period, and with James Maddison boosted by a World Cup call-up, I'm taking Leicester for the away win at plus 260 tomorrow.
Newcastle vs Chelsea screams chaos. First of all, Chelsea have only 2 wins in their last 7 matches, not to mention getting kicked out of the Carabao Cup by City midweek. The Blues also have several players confirmed going to the World Cup. Sterling, Havertz, Pulisic, Mount, Gallagher, Ziyech, Silva, Koulibaly, and Mendy. I mean, Newcastle have superstar Bruno Guimaraes going to the World Cup, but with Miguel Almiron on fire, this won't be as big of a hit, especially compared to Chelsea. Eddie Howe's men sit 3rd, and they'll be a top team in the Prem that won't get hit with World Cup injuries during the break, and they need to take full advantage of it. They're favored here at plus money, and I say take it. But if you were to stay away from this one, I wouldn't blame you.
Arsenal at Wolves is another match where I'd be cautious to lay the money down with the favorite. The Gunners will definitely want to go into the break top of the Prem, but at what cost? I know that's crazy to say, but once again, with the World Cup just a week away, can we really expect players to give their full effort? I don't think so. I still think Arsenal will get a result here. I just can't lay the minus 190.
Brighton's return to form under new manager Roberto De Zerbi continued in midweek with a cup win over Arsenal's second string at the Emirates. That victory made it 3 wins on the bounce in all competitions, with the Seagulls now only 2 points shy of the European places in the league. New Villa boss Unai Emery was unable to secure a second successive win over Manchester United in Thursday night's EFL Cup defeat, and heading into Sunday's clash against Brighton, the Midlands club are still without an away win in the league this season. My pick for this one is 3 points for Brighton, and both teams to score at plus 300.
To wrap it up, we have Fulham and United. Again, this one is going to be close. Who's even going to play for United? We saw midweek United beat Villa without Ronaldo. But how about that pass from that young Argentine Garnacho? Oof! Fulham are just a few spots below United and have only lost 1 match at Craven Cottage this season, which is where this match will be held. Guys, listen, this weekend is so tough to call, but Fulham at home has been great. Manchester United squad could be heavily rotated, so it's all about the dogs in this one. Go for Fulham.
When the Canadian men's national team finished top of the CONCACAF qualifying table and booked a place at the 2022 World Cup, John Herdman became the first manager in history to lead both the men's and women's team to the highest stage in international football. But Herdman's own personal route to Qatar is just as extraordinary as Canada's first appearance at a men's World Cup since 1986. The Englishman never played professionally and earned a pathway into management through kids coaching. After youth roles at Hartlepool and Sunderland, Herdman relocated to New Zealand, leading the women's U20s to successive World Cups and then the senior team to 2 more World Cups and the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing. More success was to follow with the Canadian women's national team as Herdman guided Les Rouges to Olympic bronze medals in a World Cup quarterfinal. And then as the head coach of the men's team, Herdman has put Canada well and truly on the global footballing map, galvanizing a side that can now be good enough to go beyond the group stage in Qatar.
Welcome John Herdman to our John Herdman. It's Mikey Singh getting set for, if not the most popular segment, the second most popular segment in Room 442. Red card, yellow card, play on. I won't say what the most popular segment is.
Come on, guy, I don't agree.
But it may or may not be Birdie's Brain Busters. All right, Mikey, take it away. Let's start. It's like World Cup themed red card, yellow card today.
Cool, and yeah, let's dive into it. I was just talking about John Herdman there, so I am saying to start off that aside from Alphonso Davies, John Herdman is the most important member of the Canadian men's national team. James,
Wow,
I'll throw it to you first.
That's a really great one. I'm going to get controversial here. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going red card. All
I
right?
like it. I'm here for the controversy.
Firstly, I'm going to say that I'm not sure Fonzie is the most important member of the playing staff. I'm wondering whether Stefan Eustáquio might become the most important. Well, Fonzie is the best player, clearly, and most dangerous player. But I'm going to say it's John Herdman in the context of this argument, just because before he arrived, admittedly there were, a lot of young players yet to make their mark on the squad. Before he arrived, they were infighting, they were scrapping, they were putting together poor result after poor result. There was zero swagger. In comes John Herdman and lifts the whole group up. Timing was beautiful, I know, with Fonzie emerging and all this, I get that. But I think without John Herdman, they wouldn't have won CONCACAF. They may well have been at the World Cup, in fairness, with that group of players, but they wouldn't have won CONCACAF the way they did.
I like it. What do you guys...
I'm gonna back James, but bring up a point that you're missing, which is huge. Look what he did with the women's team.
Yeah.
This guy is so important to Canada football for both the male and the females playing. And everything he did with the women, he did as much as he could with that team. They're gold medalists. And then he came to this really subpar Canadian men's team. Yes, there were players like James mentioned, Alphonso Davies coming up through the ranks, Jonathan David at the same time. But I kind of agree without Herdman, would that unity of this team be there? He has brought in so much that he has learned with the Canadian women team, just, being in Canada football to the men's side. And I think it's crucial. He's crucial.
There's no argument he transformed the group. I would say Alphonso Davies has probably done a little bit more on the world stage in terms of putting Canada on the map and opening some avenues for other players to potentially make that move overseas. And I think he obviously is the face of Canada, but there's no overlooking what Herdman's done. Albert, this one's for you.
Ooh.
The 2022 FIFA World Cup will be the last time that John Herdman manages the Canadian men's national team.
I just had this conversation with Sharms. I'm gonna go red card. He will. I think this won't be his.
This won't
his
be.
last. It won't be. I thought it was because, if you have a Premier League team come calling for a guy like John Herdman, how do you dismiss that? But you've taken this team to the World Cup, a place that we didn't think this team was going to be, at least not for this one. Now Canada's hosting the next one, at least part of the host, and the chance to be the manager for that side. And you have another 4 years to prepare for that and potentially, make an even better run than they would in this World Cup. I think he stays.
Yeah, it'll be a long 4 years because there is no qualification games for the next FIFA World Cup. So we'll see what happens with Herdman's future.
It's a good one, though, isn't it?
It's tough, right? Because you don't know.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a yellow card. I think it will be his last.
It's possible.
I think he is such a meticulous professional and demands the highest standards. I think beneath the veneer, he is very frustrated with what happens at Canada soccer at the highest level. Really frustrated. And understands there must be more money invested, must be better leadership. I think that might drive him out. And at least if a big club or a club in Europe tempts him, he wants to one day try his wares overseas, right, in club football. If that opportunity presents itself, which it might do after a okay World Cup, I think it'd be very hard for him to say no, even though you've got a home World Cup coming. But listen, it could be only it could be only 3 games, right? Hopefully more than that, but
You know, he's still a young guy too. These
Yeah, he is,
opportunities will
true.
come around. And if you look at his career and what he's done, he's not the type of guy to go from, you know, coaching Canada right to the top level of one of the top 5 leagues in Europe. He's going to work his way up there. So I think a job in like the championship or a lower level job in one of these European teams, I think will always be available for him because he is a good manager.
He has that profile now. And
Absolutely.
he is getting his recognition. You see articles about Herman being written left, right, and center. I have another canon one, but let's move on because there's a lot of World Cup stuff to get to. And I'm going to throw it back to Albert here. And I'm going to be saying Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah.
I haven't even finished my question yet. What was that?
It's okay, go ahead.
Cristiano Ronaldo will start all 3 games for Portugal at the World Cup. All 3 group stage games.
Man, that's a tough one too. Yeah, play on. He's going to start. He'll start all 3 games. The thing there is they still, Fernando Santos, the manager for Portugal, still relies heavily on Ronaldo. Portugal still need goals to come from somewhere, and it's always been from Ronaldo. And there's always been this thing between Santos and Ronaldo where the manager doesn't want to drop him. And so that's why I don't think it will happen. They need him so much, and so I expect him to start all 3 games.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's not starting every game for
No.
Manchester United
Those are
right
completely
now.
2 different teams, though. Do you know what I
Right,
mean?
but he's not, like, I'm saying, can he start 3 games in a row in a matter of 7-8 days now because he hasn't
Yeah.
been match fit
That Portugal team is still his team.
for so long.
Right.
João Felix is probably not very happy about you saying that.
No, Rafael Leao. There's still a lot of good players there who can trump him.
A lot of depth up top.
Yeah.
Sarah, I'm going to throw it to you here. In a group with Poland, Mexico, Saudi Arabia,
Here we go.
Argentina will not finish top of Group C.
You're like bang out of
Rojo.
I can't even get it out.
You're bang out of order.
Yeah. Are you crazy? Come on. No, this Argentina squad is so deep. Of course, they have the best player, but they have so much talent. They just won the Copa America 2 years ago. They're playing really good football. And I right now, Mexico, an older squad. Poland's Lewandowski, who doesn't play as well for for Poland as well as he does with his club teams. Sorry, Saudi Arabia is just
Yeah,
you can't
right
compare
on.
the 2. To me, I think Argentina for sure will finish the top of the group. That's one thing I'm not as concerned about with looking at some of these groups. I think Argentina finishing first is standard.
Yeah, I don't think that's too much argument there.
I love all this speculation. Though it's great. This is what we do before World Cups, right? And then what we should do is take this stuff and then look back at it after the World Cup.
Exactly.
Because no one knows at this point, right? We haven't even got the Argentina squad just yet, right? Maybe Messi doesn't make it. Right? You never know. And that would change our opinions, wouldn't it? Okay, we're out of time. That's another week of Room 442. More World Cup as we really get into top gear next week coming for you on Monday. Cheers for watching.